Hi everyone, and welcome to today's video where we're going to be doing a guide for Milan for EU4 1.35 Domination. So Milan is a nation that starts off in northern Italy right here. We do start off in the HRE, and Milan is one of my personal favorite nations in the game and one of the best candidates in my opinion for forming Italy and doing a playing tall or even later on a playing wide run as Italy. Milan has really good playing tall focused national ideas and militarily focused national ideas as well, starting off with plus 10% infantry combat ability and plus 1 diplomatic relations, and then finishing off with a super strong plus 20% national manpower. In the meantime though, we have a 10% idea discount, plus 1 yearly prestige, a 10% development discount, minus 15% mercenary maintenance, minus 5% tech discount, plus 10% global trade power, and minus 10% staff discount. Milan has a really nice mission tree right here which will enable us to expand over in Italy, and it also focuses on developing our nation as well. And of course later on, if you do decide to form Italy, which honestly you should, you could take Italian ideas or not depending on our playstyle, but of course you will receive the Italian mission tree. That's not all with Milan though. As an Italian nation, we have the ability to ally Austria and France and expand freely over here, even though these guys will become mad at us pretty soon, because as Milan, even though we start off with a feudal nobility, we actually have a disaster right here which we do want to get, the Golden Ambrosian Republic, which gives us one of the best government reforms in the game and maybe even the possibility to become a military dictatorship depending on your choice. So sit back, relax, and learn what you need to do to build a safe and secure society as Milan. Just like you can stay safe and secure online thanks to the sponsor of today's video, NordVPN. If you're like me and want to protect yourself from the various scams going around the internet today, then have I got an offer for you. Right now, NordVPN is offering an amazing deal. If you go to nordvpn.com/theredhawk, you can get NordVPN for 2 years plus 4 bonus months. If that's not an amazing deal, I don't know what is. You can browse safely online with top-tier encryption and data protection, and with Nord, you don't have to worry about phishing, malware, ransomware, or password attacks. You can also access your favorite content wherever you go or wherever it's from, because NordVPN has over 5,700 servers in more than 60 countries. No more geo restrictions, no nothing. Additionally, you can connect on up to 6 devices at the same time and enjoy NordVPN's ultra-fast connection. So, what are you waiting for? Click the link in the description or go to nordvpn.com/theredhawk and get a 2-year plan with 4 bonus months. That's nordvpn.com/theredhawk. After all, it's completely risk-free with Nord's 30-day money-back guarantee. Thank you to NordVPN for sponsoring today's video. Now let's jump in as Milan. Alright, here we are as Milan, and until we get the Golden Ambrosian Republic disaster right here, which is going to change our government reform, until then it's pretty regular gameplay. So what we're going to do right at the start is click here and go into our estates, and then you're going to go ahead and summon the Diet. You can pick whichever agenda is best for you. Then we're going to give the clergy religious state. No cheaper advisor privileges just yet, because we are going to be losing a little bit of stab later on. Then we're also going to give religious diplomats and clerical education. Next, we're going to give the nobility primacy of the nobility and increased levies. And then we're going to give the burghers land of commerce, patronage of the arts, and indebted to the burghers. Then we're going to seize land. Next, it's time to hire some advisors. We are going to be losing a little bit of money at the start, but we will start snowballing really quickly, so don't be worried about the amount of loans that you're going to get at the start of the game. So go ahead and hire whichever level 1 admin advisor you want. I'm going to get this yearly inflation reduction guy. Get a diplorep or improve relations level 1 dip advisor. I have this improve relations guy, so I am going to hire him. And then get a morale, fort defense, manpower, or discipline level 1 mill advisor. I have a discipline guy, so I am going to hire him. Next, we're immediately going to rearrange our merchants over here. Trade income isn't that relevant for the first 15 or 20 years, at least until we get some nice coastal center of trade provinces. So both of these merchants that are in Valencia and Ragusa, we're actually going to tell both of them to collect in Genoa and collect in Venice too. And we're going to tell them to establish communities. This is so we can improve relations, so these guys are less mad at us, because expanding in Italy is pretty tough due to the super high development provinces and due to the fact that we're in the HRE. Next, it's time for some alliances, and like I said, as an Italian nation, we have the ability to ally both Austria and France, even though these guys might become hostile towards us later on when we change our government reform, but more on that later. The first thing you're going to want to do is get relations with Austria going. You should be able to royal marry them right off the bat, and there we go. You're going to go ahead and do that, and then improve relations until you can ally them. Next, with this other free diplomat, you should look to ally the Pope. Hopefully he hasn't rivaled you. If the Pope has rivaled you, you're gonna keep improving relations with him and don't make him mad, because eventually he will stop rivaling you. I can't ally the Pope right off the bat, so I'll just start improving relations. Once you get an alliance with Austria and the Pope, then you should work on allying France. You will be able to do it even though you can't right at the start. And those are your 3 allies right here, France, Austria, and the Pope. After that, I recommend getting another ally, preferably a smaller nation somewhere over here that's gonna come in and help you out in your wars in Italy. Next, you can go ahead and set some rivals. You should rival the nations that you're gonna fight pretty soon, such as Ferrara, Genoa, and maybe Savoy, and Venice. Next, we can also rearrange our army a little bit. We're gonna take our army right here and delete 1 cavalry regiment. This is pretty expensive for now, so we don't need him. And this army is okay for now. Once we start our first war, we're also gonna get the Free Company. And speaking of first wars, it is also time to start getting some claims on the nations around you once you've got your alliance situation in order. The first nations you should look to fight are Mantua, Ferrara, and Lucca. In my case, I've also gotten a claim on Genoa from an estate agenda, and we do start off with cores on Venice, but we're gonna deal with Genoa, Venice, and Savoy later. These 3 guys are our first focus. Right at the start, until you get your alliances and claims in order, you can go ahead and lower army maintenance and turn off your forts to save some money. Something else you can do to get good relations with the Pope right off the bat is buy indulgence for your sins. This will also increase your yearly papal influence gain, which we do want to have a lot of. Once you do ally the Pope, start currying favors with him immediately so he can help you out in some of your initial Italian wars. I've also additionally allied the Palatinate. Like I said, aside from Austria, the Pope, and France, the 4th ally is totally up to you. Right now I've also allied Austria, and now I've started improving relations with France. You will most likely be able to ally France while they're in the war with England, and if you do, they will call you in. Of course, you should join. There's no downside to joining. You're not even going to do anything. But once you do get a strong ally, along with 2 other allies, you will be able to take the mission Friends in High Places, which gives you 10 prestige and improve relations plus 20% for 20 years. Once you have a diplomat free, either from allying France or from currying 10 favors with the Pope, like I did, you can go ahead and start spying on whichever nation around you think will be the easiest to fight. Like I said, preferably out of Mantua, Ferrara, or Lucca. But if these guys have gotten any strong alliances, and if they're too annoying to fight, you could of course look into fighting Genoa or Savoy or Venice. It's just that it's the easiest usually to start with some of these 3. In my case, I have this situation right here where Lucca, Ferrara, and Genoa have all allied each other. So it's pretty much guaranteed that I'll end up fighting all 3 of them, no matter who I declare on out of them 3. So with no particular reason, I'm gonna go ahead and spy on Ferrara right here and fight them first. Only a month has ticked over since the previous clip you saw, and France has flipped friendly, and I can go ahead and ally them. And you will be able to do the same. You should go ahead and ally them, and there we go. Now, after just 2 or 3 years, our alliance situation is ordered. Now, of course, France will call me into this war versus England, just like that, which of course I will accept. There's no reason not to accept. You should do the same. Now that that diplomat is also free, you could also potentially curry favors with your other ally to help you in our first war. That's exactly what I'm going to do with the Palatinate. A couple of months before you're ready to declare your first war, you should go ahead and hire the Free Company as well, just like that, and you can go ahead and hire a general as well. And now that I have a claim on Ferrara, I will be starting my first war. You can go ahead and start your first war too, and I'm gonna call in the Palatinate and the Pope because they do have 2 allies. And there we go. That's my first war started. For some of you, the Ambrosian Republic disaster may have already happened, and that's totally okay. It doesn't really matter when it happens, and of course I will show you what to do once I get it myself. But either way, go ahead and fight your first war. If you're fighting Mantua, Ferrara, or Lucca, you're gonna go ahead and full annex them. If you're fighting any of these 3 other guys, I'll tell you what to do once I fight them as well. While you're in your initial war, you can spy on some of the other guys that you're gonna go ahead and fight next. And once you do go ahead and finish your war, like I said, if it's versus the small guys, you can go ahead and full annex them. Be careful with Ferrara though, there are 2 provinces and it will be almost 40 AE, but you should still be able to go ahead and do it. And there we go, that's my first war done with Ferrara. I'm also going to take all of their money, you should do the same. After your first war is done, because this is Italy and the HRE, AE will be significantly higher than playing elsewhere, so I do recommend it chilling for 2 to 3 years before you declare your next war. In the meantime, I'm going to spy on Lucca, Bologna, Mantua, and nations like that. Right here in the early game, we're still waiting for the goal of the Ambrosian Republic disaster, but that doesn't mean we need to sit around and do nothing. You can go ahead and play as normal until it happens. You may be wondering why we're making all of these claims instead of following along with our mission tree. Well, that's because in order to kickstart the conquest branch of our mission tree right here, the game actually wants us to fight Venice and Genoa first, but that is usually not the easiest way to start off. Of course, if it's easy for you to fight Genoa or Venice right at the start, go ahead and do it, but it's usually not. So that's why we're making these claims instead of waiting to get the claims from our mission tree. While you're chilling and spying on a nation, you can also improve relations with outraged countries with your other diplomat. A little bit of time after the game starts, you are going to want to keep an eye out on the Ottomans for one specific reason. You guys know that after they clean up Byzantium and some of the Turkish beyliks, which they seem to be doing right now in my game, after that they will usually declare on Albania. Now the thing is, Albania is guaranteed by Venice, and Venice always joins that war. So keep an eye out. When the Ottomans fight Albania and Venice is in that may be the right time for you to declare on Venice as well and get your cores back right here and maybe a little else. So pay attention to that. That usually happens after about 10 years. Of course, after 1450, once the Renaissance spawns, and in my game right here, it's actually 1453 and it still hasn't spawned yet, which is kind of weird, but it will happen soon enough. After the Renaissance spawns, hopefully you'll be lucky enough to spawn it yourself, in which case that's excellent. But if you don't, you should go ahead and activate the Encourage Development State Edict in your capital state of Lombardy right here and bump Milan up to 30 development for the age objective and to help speed up the spawning of the Renaissance. Of course, only do that after the Renaissance has spawned. Don't dev it before that. And there it is, it just spawned in my case in Florence. Additionally, also only dev it after you've gotten Tech 4 in every category. And just as I was getting ready to declare on Mantua, as we can see, the Ottomans have asked me for mill access for precisely the war I was talking about in the previous clip. They have declared on Albania and now are fighting Albania, Venice, and Naxos. And this is perfect. This is exactly the right time where we want to strike Venice as well. Of course, you won't do it right away. You'll wait for a year or two for the war to drag on and for Venice to get beaten up in battle, lose some of their manpower and stuff like that, and then you're gonna declare. Of course, I will give the Ottomans mill access here, and usually Austria does hate Venice, and they will be willing to help out in that war. In my case, though, they actually don't hate Venice, so I'm gonna have to do this only with the Pope and the Palatinate, which, after Venice gets beaten up a little, it is also doable. So, instead of fighting Mantua next, I'll actually put that on pause and get ready to fight Venice next. While you're waiting for Venice to lose a little bit of their army, you can go ahead and spy on them. No need to actually claim anything, this is so we can get our sieges done a little bit faster. And just as I was getting ready to declare on Venice, my ruler has died, and our ruler is pretty old. Even if you get an heir, you will still end up usually in a regency or a regency council. And what does that mean? Well, it means that the Golden Ambrosian Republic disaster will fire. So as soon as I let a month take over right here, we will see what happens. It's too bad that it's happening right now just as I was getting ready to fight Venice, but it's not a big deal. I can show it off for you guys. I should also let you know that you're gonna lose stab during this disaster, but there's no need to stab up. You'll see why. And there's the disaster right there. This is the first event, and we have only one option for St. Ambrose, where we will enact the Ambrosian Republic Tier 1 government reform. We lose some more stab, and our neighbors hate us because we've changed our government form, but it is actually really good. And there you go. You're of course gonna click this right here, and you are gonna go ahead and pick whichever candidate you want. This doesn't really matter too much because this guy will leave very, very soon. I'm just gonna get this admin guy since I'm most lacking on admin points. And there we go. Now we're still in the disaster. As we can see, we need 0 stability to end it, or we need to be a monarchy or some other modifiers. But we actually don't care about any of these requirements right here, and you'll see why. That was only the first event. Now we're waiting for the second event. While you're in the disaster, don't do anything else. That's why I'm gonna delay my war versus Venice here. Of course, I didn't show off what the Golden Ambrosian Republic gives us, but basically, as the name says, we are a republic. We gain plus 10% national tax, plus 5% morale of armies, plus 10 max absolutism, and plus 50 governing capacity. A very, very nice, unique republic government reform. And this is the second event that we've been waiting for, a proposition for Sforza. And by the way, I'm not fighting Provence right here, I'm just helping out my allies. So the options right here is we shall appoint him commander of our armies, and this super strong general becomes in charge, a 3-5-4-2, and of course we gain local autonomy in a province that he has pretty much popped out of. And of course you have the other option right here where you can pick we don't need Sforza, you lose additional stab and stuff like that. But of course we're already at -3 stab. The option you want to go with is the first one right here. And of course you will eventually get the event the Milanese Succession, where France and Austria gain a PUCB on us. This does always happen, and once you get this, France or Austria or both might break their alliance with you. But don't worry, it's completely normal. We will be able to re-ally them later on. Now we're waiting for the third event. Of course, if you're beating up rebels or something, you can totally put this guy in charge of your army. As we can see, Austria has just broken their alliance with me, completely normal. Right now, France has also broken their alliance with me. This is once again completely normal. And this is the next event that we were waiting for, Sforza clashes with the Republic. You can choose this first option right here, where you once again lose some more stab, and we enable the military dictatorship tier 1 government reform, and we basically once again flip out of the Golden Ambrosian Republic. This is a really strong government reform as well, and it is pretty good. You can choose to go with whichever one you want, either the Ambrosian Republic or this one, but of course we will have the option for that later on, or we can choose the second option right here, where we once again lose some more stab, Sforza dies, and pretenders rise up. We actually want to go with this first option right here, and once again change our government reform, just like we did from a monarchy to a republic. Now we go into a military dictatorship. Choose this first option right here. And this is the second to last event. Just like that, we're no longer an Ambrosian Republic, and instead, we're a military dictatorship. You can of course choose a tier 2 government reform here for free. There's really no need to do this. You will be able to do one later on as well. But now we're still waiting because the disaster still isn't over. We're waiting for the final event where we can choose to either go back to being a monarchy, go back to being a Golden Ambrosian Republic, or stay as a military dictatorship. As we can see, even though France just broke their alliance with me, I can actually re-ally them. The military dictatorship government reform is really strong as well. We gain plus 10% morale of armies, minus 0.075 monthly autonomy change, and plus 30 max absolutism. And this is the final event that we were waiting for, Sforza seizes the throne. And these are our options. We can either choose the first option right here, which keeps Sforza in charge, but it flips us over to a monarchy. And of course, that's what we were right at the start, and you generally don't want to go with this because it is generic. The second option right here is unacceptable, appoint a new captain general, where this other guy becomes ruler, pretenders rise up, the disaster ends, but we stay a military dictatorship. And the third option right here is pretenders once again rise up, but we go back to being an Ambrosian Republic. So this is your final choice right here. You can either go back to a monarchy, which I don't recommend, you can choose this to stay as a military dictatorship, or you can choose this to go back to the Ambrosian Republic. The choice is totally up to you. For the purposes of this guide, we're going to be going with the Ambrosian Republic. And there we go, we can choose this right here. And just like that, we can go ahead and beat up these pretenders right here. Now, once that's done, if you haven't stabbed up already, you can stab up for a final time up to 0. And just like that, the disaster ends, we gain additional stab and prestige, and now our government has been stabilized, and you either chose to be an Ambrosian Republic or a military dictatorship. After this is done, you can take this mission right here for some nice bonuses. Now, we can continue our conquest. Right now, I can also re-ally Austria. As you can see, these guys breaking their alliance with us, it really wasn't a big deal at all. What I'm gonna do to continue my run is declare on Bologna because the Pope won't help them, and I'm gonna make Florence break some alliances. I will call on France to help me out. Additionally, once you've wrapped up the disaster, you can go ahead and give the clergy, the nobles, and the burghers all of their cheaper advisor privileges. Just like that. When the Shadow Kingdom event fires, of course you will have to decide whether to leave or stay in the HRE. And as always, if you're allied to Austria, stay in the HRE. If you're not allied to Austria, leave the HRE. We want to stay in the HRE because Austria may be allied to someone else in the HRE, like in my case, Genoa right here, which means Genoa is gonna stay in as well. And we don't want to have to fight Austria when we fight someone else over here. So if you need to fight someone in Italy that remains in the HRE, or if you're allied to Austria, stay. Otherwise, leave. Once you embrace the Renaissance, you will be able to take the mission Renaissance City for a construction and dev discount in Milan. And this is the Shadow Kingdom event. Of course, our country is a natural part of the Empire. I will be staying. And now that I've defeated Bologna, I will be full annexing them as well. By the time you finish your second war and the disaster, most of the nations in Italy will have left the HRE. In my case, everyone has, except for me and Genoa. Aggressive expansion will be a little lower now. Next, to continue with my wars, I'll be declaring on Lucca right here and making Genoa their ally, end their alliance with Austria so I can fight Genoa later. We're still working on fighting some of the smaller guys, and once you clean up about 2 or 3 out of these tiny guys, you can look to fight some of the bigger guys. So that's why I'm fighting Lucca. Once again, I'm gonna call on France and the Palatinate to help out. Once you hit Admin Tech 5, it will be time for our first idea group, and the idea group selection has changed for Milan in the few recent patches because, of course, usually we opened up with quantity and economic. Economic have the dev discount, the policy between these two had the dev discount as well, but the idea groups have changed slightly in the few recent patches, so that is no longer the optimal opening. So you do have a couple of choices based on what your plans are as Milan. I do either way recommend opening up with a military idea group. If you're going for wide gameplay and you're planning on conquering a whole lot, I recommend quantity because we will be super rich and we want to be able to field a massive army way bigger than what we conquer will allow us because our money will allow it, of course. Or if you're going for a more tall gameplay or something like that, I do recommend quality ideas. So one of these two, quality is also super helpful because we will be utilizing boats as well. So either quality or quantity as your opener. This if you're going wide, this if you're going tall. Now that I've defeated Lucca, I will be full annexing them as well. You're full annexing all of these small guys here, Ferrara, Bologna, Lucca, Mantua. Of course, whenever all of these guys are above 50 loyalty, don't forget to seize land, I just did it, and of course, don't forget to periodically lower autonomy wherever you can. Right now, I've just gotten some new burger loans, and I'm gonna use those loans to start building buildings, starting off with marketplaces, of course, in the center of trade and estuary provinces. Then, once you're done with that, you can continue with some churches. Now that a little bit of time has passed, I will be continuing with my wars, and I can notice right here that if I want to declare on Venice, Austria will actually help me out. So that's exactly what I'm gonna do right here. If you missed your opportunity to fight Venice while they were fighting the Ottomans, you will need Austria's help because Venice is pretty powerful. So I'm just gonna declare a reconquest for my core Bergamo right here, call in Austria and the Palatinate, and the Pope will probably come in after a little bit of time. Interesting that they're allied to Byzantium right here and that Byzantium still exists, but of course I'm not gonna do anything with Byzantium right here because they probably wouldn't exist at this point in your game, so there's nothing you could do about it. So why would I do anything? Either way, I'm gonna declare on Venice for the reconquest of Bergamo and call in my allies. Like I said, once you've wrapped up a couple of these guys right here, you can move on with the big guys like Genoa, Savoy, and Venice. If we fight Venice and Genoa, we will be able to kickstart one of these two branches right here. For your tier 3 government reform, I recommend consolidation of power. This is mainly to reduce state influence so we'll have an easier time managing them. And I did get swapped out of political dynasties, by the way, but it's no big deal. Republicanism is very good too. For your first stage ability, you should take Justified Wars. And once you go ahead and defeat Venice, whenever that is, of course I recommend getting your 2 cores back in Bergamo and Brescia, and then depending on what you've been doing before that and how your aggressive expansion is, you could take 1 to 3 more provinces from them. What I'm gonna do in my game right here is take Ravenna to stop the Pope from taking it, and I'm also gonna take Verona because it's a nice province and it's a center of trade. I could also take Padua, but that would stop me from fighting other nations later on. So I'm satisfied with these 4 provinces for now. I'm also gonna get war reps and money from Venice. And that's my war with them done. Additionally, depending on your expansion opportunities, you could take other stuff from Venice as well. Now in my game right here, let's say this is sort of a tall Italy run where I only want to control the Italy region or maybe only the Genoa and Venice trade nodes, so I'm not interested in anything outside of that. However, if you're interested in something, you could of course take a province or 2 over here from Venice, release the nation of Dalmatia, reconquer their cores, maybe get a province down here to enable you to expand into the Mamluks, maybe something over here to prevent the Ottomans from expanding. It's totally up to you what you take from Venice aside from the stuff in Italy. Either way, once you do get your cores back, you will be able to take the mission Reclaim the Ducal Lands, where we gain prestige, Republican tradition, and permaclaims on the further Venetian provinces over here. Of course, whenever you finish a war over in Italy, you are gonna chill a little bit more than other regions due to the aggressive expansion. Now sure, if I take 1 low-dev province, a coalition won't form, but we might be close to that limit of where we take another province in our next war, a coalition will form, and it's not so much that if a coalition forms, they'll beat us up or anything like that. No, with these allies and with our strength, especially us being human, we'll be able to beat back that coalition very easily. But the thing is, you won't be able to expand without fighting everyone in that coalition. So that's why it's not good to get coalition. It slows down our conquest. So it's better to take 1 province and then in the next war another province rather than take 3 provinces at once and not do a war for 20 years. Whenever you max out on points, which will be quite a lot if you go with the Ambrosian Republic, as we can see my original guy right here, who's only 45, is a 566 now due to all the re-elections, and he's a scholar and tactical genius. But you will be capping out on points, and what do you want to do with that? Well, obviously you're gonna go into the development right here, sort by the cheapest province, and with Diplo points specifically, you're gonna develop the provinces which produce high value trade goods, like Bologna right here. Let's bump it up 1 time, let's bump it up another time, and we're gonna keep going until it's no longer the cheapest one. Okay, now Ferrara is cheaper, so let's bump up Ferrara once. Okay, now Ravenna is cheaper, let's do Ravenna, and then it's Como and Bergamo and so on. You're gonna do that with Diplo points, dev high value trade good provinces, with mill points, dev grain and livestock, and with admin points, well, Hopefully you won't have any spare admin points, but you can def pretty much whatever you want. Now that a little bit of time has passed, even though Austria and France have called me into their wars, I will be continuing on with my wars by declaring on Genoa right here. And of course, once you wrap these guys up, Genoa and Venice are prime targets due to the fact that these two branches unlock if we reclaim our cores and if we conquer Genoa. So that's why, of course, I'm going to declare on them. They're allied to Venice now, but it shouldn't be a problem because Venice is weak. I'll call in the Palatinate and the Pope. When fighting Genoa in your first war, you'll usually have expanded before that, and aggressive expansion may be high-ish, but go ahead and check and see, and depending on how aggressive expansion is, you could either take only the province or Genoa, or if aggressive expansion permits it, you could also take Albenga and Corsica if you want to. It's totally up to you how much you take in your first war, depending on the aggressive expansion. In my game, I'm gonna take both Genoa and Albenga here, and then I'll fight them again in order to expand over here. But that's my first war with Genoa done. Once you do go ahead and take that province, you will be able to take the mission Subdue Genoa, which gives us permaclaims on Emilia-Romagna and Liguria as well. And if you've already expanded in Emilia-Romagna in these small guys over here, you'll also be able to take this mission, which gives us a permaclaim on Tuscany and admin points. Once you hit admin tax 7, you will be able to take your second idea group, and generally for your second idea group, if you're playing tall, like I am for example in this campaign, you would want to go with a money-making or playing tall focused idea such as infrastructure, economic, or trade. However, if you're blobbing out, and maybe you took a quantity for your first one, then you'd want to take an idea group which will help you expand even more, such as diplomatic, for example. The diplomats will help you avoid coalitions, the province war score cost is great as well. However, for the money-making idea groups, you can take whichever one of these three you want: infrastructure, trade, or economic. Economic is the worst one out of these in recent patches for Milan, and trade is good, but also infrastructure I think is super underrated for the construction discount, port maintenance, and development discount as well, and all of the other bonuses. But all three of these are great. In my game right here, I'm gonna go with trade ideas for my second idea group. Now, after seizing Crownland again, I have gotten over 30% Crownland control. For your tier 4 government reform, because we want to stay Catholic the entirety of the campaign and have good relations with the Pope, until we conquer Rome of course, I do recommend going with lands for the church. It seems we have a pretty strong France in my campaign here. They just got Burgundy and they've already taken London. Of course, while you're at peace, don't just sit around and do nothing. You can improve relations with outraged countries and your allies, build some claims, and most importantly, make sure to build buildings wherever you can. Don't forget to also upgrade centers of trade. At a certain point, once you gain enough coastline, you will want to go ahead and build up your navy as well. What I recommend is building up a galley fleet first that'll help you combat some of these guys right here, at least the small guys, and then you can also build some light ships that help you protect trade in Genoa and Venice. I'm going to start off by building a couple of light ships here for both trade nodes. Now to continue with my wars, I'll declare on Mantua right here, and I'll make Venice and Savoy and some alliances in the process. We're taking it slow. At this point, you're fighting pretty much whichever of the easiest nations that you border, you can fight. Of course, don't fight the Pope. If you did end up going with trade ideas, with the next merchants that you're gonna get, you can send them to Valencia, Ragusa, Tunis, wherever around. Those guys don't need to establish communities. They can maximize profit. And now that I've dealt with Mantua, I'll be full annexing them. Once you've conquered everything that you want to conquer that was in the HRE, just like I have in my game right here, which is pretty much the Genoa provinces, you can go ahead and leave the HRE to gain some of the other bonuses that are associated with not being in the HRE, like a kingdom rank, for example. Venice has just been defeated by Hungary in my game, Aquileia and Padua have popped out, and Trent has taken Treviso right here. Now that things have calmed down, I will be continuing with my wars by declaring on Florence right here, since they don't have any allies and they seem to be the easiest nation to fight. Of course, Hungary will remove their guarantee over these guys, so I can fight them soon as well, but for now, it's Florence. Right here in the earliest part of the game, we're focusing only on this northern region of Italy right here, so up until Tuscany and Emilia-Romagna. We'll deal with the south later and then with the Pope last. When fighting Florence, it can be tricky, depending on how much they've expanded, of course, also, but all of the provinces over in the Tuscany area are super high development, so you're gonna want to be careful when taking provinces here. Either way, I'm gonna declare for Pisa and not call in anyone. And this super quick and easy war is done. It only took a couple of months. What I'm gonna take in my initial war versus Florence here are the provinces of Pisa and Siena, and then in my next war, I'll take Florence and Arezzo because they're pretty much the same aggressive expansion. For your naval doctrine, in the early game right here, I recommend taking galley combat ability, and later if you're going for a tall run, you could swap over to merchant navy, or if you're going for a conquest run, you could stay with galley combat for the entirety of the campaign. Now, because I've left the HRE earlier, I can't upgrade to a kingdom rank. In a regular playthrough with no real rush, you could probably own all of the northern Italian areas that I mentioned, except for probably one by 1500. Of course, if you're a more experienced player, you can own all of this by 1500, or maybe even more. And that's not something you strictly need to focus on and get coalitions and stuff like that. It's sort of a baseline that you want to focus your game around. Now I can see that Hungary has removed their guarantee over Padua, so I'm gonna declare on them. They don't have any allies. I normally wouldn't do this. Aggressive expansion is a bit high-ish, but it is a nice opportunity to take advantage of. Now, someplace I made a mistake that I'm going to show off is, like you saw earlier, I left the HRE because every nation that I wanted to fight that was in the HRE, well, I had already conquered. What I didn't anticipate, though, was Trent taking over Treviso right here, so now that means I have to fight Austria, because they are in the HRE. So this might be something you might have to deal with as well. Now that I've defeated Padua, I'll be full annexing them. Once you take at least 3 provinces from Venice in these certain areas right here, you will be able to take the mission Capture Terra Firma, which gives you 50 Diplo points and Burma claims on Piedmont and Venice. Now, to continue with my wars, I'll be declaring on Savoy since their ally Naples won't help them out. Once again, I won't call anyone in. By this point in the game, it should be pretty easy to wrap up anyone you're fighting up here. You're stronger than any nation, Savoy, Genoa, Venice, which are usually the other top dogs in northern Italy. And right now, the only thing holding you back is aggressive expansion, so you do have to be patient. Either way, I'm going to declare for Nisa. For your tier 5 government reform, you do have a really good option with Milan if you're staying with Milanese ideas too, because we do have a merc maintenance discount of 15%, and then this government reform right here, condottieri contracts, gives us a minus 33% merc cost and plus 5% mercenary discipline. Of course, you could also go for leadership here as well, for minus 25% merc cost. However, if you're not interested in that, I recommend organized military staff or military engineering, or additionally, you could also go for the defensive stance right here, which is really powerful, especially for this mission right here, fortify the passes and the Alpine Wall. With this mission right here, every fort that we build in these highlighted provinces, or the ones that are written down in this tooltip right here, once we build them and then take this mission, they'll get upgraded to the next level of fort. So obviously they're level 2 forts, but once we do the mission, they'll get up to level 4 forts about 50 or 60 years ahead of time. And then we also have even more fort bonuses right here for this mission. So those are really strong options right here as Milan. These 2 merc ones and then the defensive stance too. You could go with these, but they're quite generic. For my game, I'm gonna go with defensive stance because I'm planning on doing a sort of a tall Italy run and I want to be fortified up in the north. Now that I defeated Savoy, I will be full annexing them. Of course, it says right here that a coalition will form, but that's not always true. First of all, 3 nations can't form a coalition. You need 4. And then I also have a truce with Venice and a truce with Florence, so they can't join. So Genoa obviously can't form a coalition by itself. So that's why I'll be full annexing Savoy. Keep in mind things like this, even though aggressive expansion might be high-ish. I always show off this event when I get it in guides, but if you have hired an inflation reduction and a trade efficiency guy, you will be able to get the radical reforms event where you can fire both of them for 200 admin and 200 diplo points. Of course, since these are really good advisors and you generally want to run them pretty often, you can just go ahead and fire them, then get the points, and then hire them back. Simple as that. Now I've also wrapped up trade ideas after wrapping up quality earlier on, and I have an additional merchant. This guy I'm going to place in Ragusa and tell him to transfer over to Genoa, and the policy between quality and trade, which is what I've gone with, is really good too for plus 15% trade efficiency. Right now it's 1494 and I'm about 25 ducats plus. Once you're making more than 20 ducats, you could run level 2 advisors. And there we go, I've hired them. This guy's actually level 3 because he's half cost. Now for me to continue with my wars, I'll be declaring on Genoa. They somehow got this from Savoy earlier on and they're allied to Hungary, which is gonna make this war pretty long, so that's why I'm declaring, even though aggressive expansion is high-ish. Once these guys get pretty small and you're only fighting the same guys, aggressive expansion isn't really that much of a problem since only the same 2 or 3 or 4 nations that are left are mad at you. But be careful with the North German guys as aggressive expansion as well. So I'm gonna declare on Genoa for the conquest of Montferrat and call on Austria and the Pope to help out with Hungary. We're pretty much cleaning any small nations up here in these regions until we move on down south. In my game, it looks like I'm gonna have a pretty complicated campaign in southern Italy because Aragon owns a lot of this and the Ottomans are here too. Now that I've defeated Genoa, I will actually be full annexing them, even though it's quite a bit of aggressive expansion. Like in the previous war, these guys can't actually form a coalition. I still have a truce with Florence, Venice is only an OPM, who cares about Trent and Switzerland too, so they won't be able to form a coalition. And there's Genoa annexed with these 4 provinces. Now, if I want to fight Aragon, I also have a land connection to them in order to take these 2 provinces right here. When you do have the money for it, I do recommend sort of getting ready for this mission right here. Like I said, in these provinces that are written down right here, Como, Torino, Saluzzo, Nizza, Trent, and Friuli, the forts will get upgraded if you build them over there. So what I recommend doing actually is building a fort over here in Nizza, just like that, and then one in Torino, of course, if there aren't forts there already, and then you can delete the one in Cuneo that's usually present over there. Then you skip a province, you already have one in Como right here, then a fort in Brescia is good. If you're taking Trent, definitely put one in Trent. I'm not going to be taking it in my case. And then you can put one in Treviso or Friuli right here. It's totally up to you. What I'm going to do is Brescia and then Treviso. And then after you build those forts, you will be able to take the mission and then do it, but only after you build the forts that you want it to be upgraded. And if you're lucky, you'll also get Leonardo da Vinci as an advisor. He's a 50% cheaper skill 3 production efficiency guy and some points. And it's not just da Vinci as well. You can get Michelangelo, Donatello, and all those other guys right there. I'm definitely going to go ahead and hire him. As we can see, now that the forts are built, I am able to take this mission, and all of the ones right there will get upgraded, pretty much the ones in Nizza, Torino, and Como, but I'm not doing it just yet because I also want to put down one in Friuli right here. So once I go ahead and fight Florence and Aquitilia right here, which are allied, and once I take this province and build a fort, then I'm gonna go ahead and take this mission right here. You could, of course, if you want to get super fortified, build some more in Saluzzo, in Trent, and stuff like that, but there's really no need. And now to sort of finish the cleanup of northern Italy, I'm going to declare on Florence right here for the conquest of Florence and co-belligerent Aquileia. As you can see, aggressive expansion really isn't a problem once there's a few nations left. It's only at the start that it's really a problem where everyone can coalition you and hugbox you. And now that my war with Florence and Aquileia is done, I will be full annexing them. As we can see, these countries might join a coalition versus us, but it won't really happen. And there we go. Pretty much I've completed the entire conquest of northern Italy. I just haven't fought Venice yet because I haven't gotten around to it, and I haven't fought Trent yet because they're in the HRE and I can't do it without fighting Austria. But by around the 1500s, you should have wrapped up everything in northern Italy. After you do that, you will be able to take the mission Conquer Tuscany, which gives us a dev discount and yearly prestige. As we can see at this point, we're always pretty much maxed out on points due to the amazing rulers and the high level advisors we're running, so I'm always developing even though I don't show it on camera. So let's go and sort by the cheapest once again. There we go, I'll bump this up a couple of times, maybe this right here, this right here. Let's do these grain provinces over here with mill points, this one right here too, and then admin points I do use for deving, even though it's not really optimal, it just makes the other two more expensive, but I can do something like this, for example, and something like this and this. And now that I've built a fort in Friuli, I will finally go ahead and take this mission right here, which upgrades any of the forts in these specified provinces right here. So maybe this mission would be a waste without putting a fort down in Saluzzo and Trent, but either way, the other ones, Nizza, Torino, Como, and Friuli, will get upgraded. You can build them in all or in none of the provinces on this list. But there we go, now all of these forts right here are level 4 forts. And you gain other fort bonuses too if you complete this mission too. And around the 1500s, your game should look a little something like this. Basically, we started off as Milan and we popped off possibly 1 or 2 wars before the Golden Ambrosian Republic disaster fired, where you would have gone through the event chain and chosen whether to potentially go back to being a monarchy, which, like I said, I don't recommend doing, or whether you stayed as an Ambrosian Republic, flipped to a military dictatorship, then stayed as a military dictatorship, or flipped back to an Ambrosian Republic. And obviously, for the purposes of this guide, we did go with the Ambrosian Republic, although some of you may have gone with the military dictatorship as well, which is obviously super strong too. But after navigating through that disaster, we continued to clean up the initial small starting nations that I recommend fighting early, such as Ferrara, Mantua, Lucca, and Bologna, and after wrapping up 2 or 3 of those guys, you could have potentially, with the help of your large allies France and Austria, pushed into the larger initial nations that we needed to fight for these missions, which were of course Genoa and Venice. And after taking care of the small guys, fighting Genoa and Venice once or twice, then you should have pushed on into the remaining 2 or 3 nations in the other regions in northern Italy that we need to conquer, which are of course Savoy right here and possibly Florence over here, along with some minor stragglers like maybe Saluzzo and Siena. And by this point in the game, you should have conquered pretty much the entirety of northern Italy with the exception of a couple of provinces or an area or something like that. As we can see in my game, this is what I own right here. I still haven't conquered Venice or Treviso right here because of the reasons that I mentioned earlier, but if you had more luck than me in your alliance situation, then you have conquered this as well. Of course, during this point, we weren't only conquering regions over here. Some of you may have potentially been expanding in other areas as well through vassals, like I've showcased, for example, in my Florence or Naples runs, where you could take some nations over here from Aragon and release them, like Catalonia and Valencia, maybe some nations over in the Balkans, if you plan on expanding that way at all. And of course, we weren't only focusing on expansion either. You should have been focusing on improving your nation economically too. I'm going to showcase what I've built so far, and you should look to build something similar by this point in the game as well. As we can see, I've put down marketplaces in all of the center of trade and estuary provinces, pretty much every province that gives you more than 2 trade power, and I've upgraded all of my centers of trade to level 2. Then I've also built production buildings in all the high value trade good provinces, a bunch of churches as well, a couple of army buildings here and there as well, and of course we did build quite a few forts over here in the northern regions in order to take this mission right here, fortify the passes, which upgraded all of our forts here to level 4 way earlier than it's actually possible, because as you'll know, you get level 4 forts at Miltech 14, which is quite a while from now. And of course you will continue to follow along with your excellent mission tree right here. This sort of branch this way focuses on improving your nation, and this branch over here focuses on conquest. Later on, when you do complete this mission, the Kingdom of Lombardy, if you're not a republic, you will gain a restoration of Union CB on Naples if they do exist. In my case, they're actually already a junior partner of Castile and they've been beaten up by Aragon, so it doesn't matter too much. But if you went with a military dictatorship or with the Ambrosian Republic, you will get permaclaims on the areas right here in southern Italy that are highlighted, and then later on you get a permaclaim on the entirety of Italy, then later some stuff with Austria and the Pope as well. But after you take care of northern Italy, then you'll push into southern Italy, and then finally, once you're already ready to form Italy, basically once you have all the requirements right here except for Rome and Admin Tech 10, and once you've taken care of southern Italy, then you're gonna fight the Pope finally and beat him up in 2 or 3 wars, and then finally take the province of Rome itself and then form Italy. Speaking of forming Italy, Italy also has amazing national ideas and an amazing mission tree. However, if you're planning to play a tall campaign, I do recommend sticking with Milanese ideas. You will get the Italian mission tree either way, and of course if you're going for a conquest focused campaign, I do recommend going with the Italian national ideas instead. And if you're not planning on playing a tall campaign where you own maybe all of Italy or all of Genoa and Venice, after that you'll continue to expand over here pretty much in southern France, in Iberia first, and this region right here, then into the Balkans, and then out from this central position into every direction, maybe if you're going for a Roman Empire run. However, if you're going for a tall run, well, you're going to focus on what you've decided to focus on in your campaign. This is what we took for our first few idea groups in my run here specifically. Like I said, quality for a tall opener, quantity for a wide opener, and then trade, economic, or infrastructure for your second idea group when playing tall, and then maybe something like Diplo for your second idea group when playing wide. And after that, you pretty much know the idea groups already needed for a tall run. You could go for something like offensive and then another money-making idea group. I would go, for example, offensive and then infrastructure or economic in my run. So at quality, trade, offensive, infrastructure, or economic, and after that, well, it depends on the run. And for a wide run, you'd probably go something like quantity, Diplo, then quality, then maybe something like influence or something like that, or maybe religious or humanist for your fourth one. And after that, all of them are up to you depending on your goals and your run. This is what we took for our first 5 government reforms. Like I said, you do have a couple of options in each tier. This is specifically, of course, for the Ambrosian Republic. You could go for political dynasties, republicanism, or this one. Over here for your third one, consolidation of power is pretty good. For tier 4, definitely go with lanes for the church, since we do want to remain Catholic and have good relations with the Pope until we conquer him. For tier 5 with Milanese ideas, these two are really good, and this one as well, of course, for defensiveness related to our missions, but these two are pretty good generic ones as well. For tier 6, Attorney General is really good for a tall run, but presidential system is pretty good for a wide run. Don't swap to a monarchy just yet. For tier 7, provincial governments is good for a tall run, and administrative divisions is good for a wide run. For tier 8, go with empower the burghers or embrace the economic theory. This one is also pretty good too if you take economic or infrastructure. For tier 9, I recommend broaden executive powers. For tier 10, all of these are really good. Take whichever one you want. They're pretty much for possible policies, except for this one right here, which you need innovative ideas or the Enlightenment for. Then for tier 11, military rulership or citizenry are really good ones. For tier 12, I recommend this one for playing tall, this one for playing wide. And for tier 13, if you're still a republic, I recommend strengthen executive powers. Otherwise, you could at any point swap over to being a monarchy. And like I said, by around the 1500s, your realm should look a little something like this. If you're not that confident in your abilities, or if you're not sure if your game is going to go like mine, this save file is available for all YouTube members in the Save Games Discord channel, and you can continue playing as Milan from this state forward. If you enjoyed this video, don't hesitate to leave a like. It really helps out a lot. And if you like the content and want to see more videos like this, make sure to hit that subscribe button so you don't miss out on any of them. And you can become a member today and join the Discord. The link is in the description. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time with another EU4 video.